the title of my message is The Road to Jerusalem. Now, Jesus wasn't alone on this road, because what was happening is everybody was descending into Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. So people from all over Israel were coming to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. Now, Passover was a celebration that they really commemorated and celebrated the Exodus, where Moses led the people of God out of Israel, okay, and crossed the Red Sea. And so the Passover was a celebration of the Israelites being freed from the Egyptian slaves. So everyone is coming to Jerusalem and was to celebrate this Passover. So I want to talk to you about the road that Jesus walked down into Jerusalem, because this was going to be the last week of Jesus' life, but nobody knew it. Everyone was expecting something different, though. Everybody that was watching, all the onlookers, everybody watching and being there, disciples included, thought that something was different was going to happen than what actually happened. It wasn't quite what it seemed. Who here has ever been to a Ripley's, believe it or not? Into a Ripley's, believe it or not. We were in Orlando for a vacation, and we went to a Ripley's, believe it or not, with our kids. And they kind of walked through. They have all these different kinds of cool things you can go through. Well, one of the areas, and they even have this sometimes at carnivals and different things, is like those mirrors that you look at and kind of distort. It doesn't give you a true picture, right? I have one here, and you kind of, we came up to this spot where it's a mirror, and just like, oh, whoa. Like sometimes it make you look bigger than you are, like, man, like, or sometimes skinnier, taller, shorter, like what is going on in this mirror? And it kind of, distorts what is reality. It doesn't give you a clear picture of what is really, looking into the mirror. And when I look in the mirror, it's kind of like, oh yeah, like it kind of looks a little bit funny, and it kind of distorts, and it's not giving an accurate picture, and it distorts what reality is. It's not really, that's not really what is reality. And so when the disciples were watching, and Jesus is coming up to Jerusalem, it wasn't quite what it seemed. They thought one thing was going to happen, but it actually was something completely different. Jesus, he's entering in Jerusalem, and he does a few things that make people think this. So he does some things. In Luke chapter 19, verse 30, for example, he has them go get a colt. He says, I want you to get a colt that's never been ridden. Okay, and this specification, that the colt that has never been ridden, is significant, all right, because in light of the ancient rule, only animals that had not been used for ordinary purposes were appropriate for sacred purposes. We find this in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 3. When it's talking about atonement, it says, get a colt or a donkey that's never been worked and it's never worn a yoke. If you were to look and read in Matthew's account, a donkey or a colt that is mentioned, and so this was the same event, but Matthew, he was focusing on the prophecy from Zechariah. See, this was all prophesied in the Old Testament. And we read in Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9, it says, rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. So the disciples and the religious rulers, the people looking on, would known Zechariah's prophecy and look and see, oh, a king is coming. Oh, look at this is going to be our time. The disciples, the Bible says, that when Jesus got the colt, they took their cloaks and they threw them, the Bible says, they threw them down on the donkey. They threw them down on the road. The Bible tells us for the donkey to walk on. They have palm branches that they threw down, and they were hailing the King, the Messiah. Now, Jesus was the King. He was the Messiah, but things weren't going to happen the way they expected or the way that they had hoped. See, what they were hoping for was a ruling king, the Messiah, to come in and rid the Roman rule. Okay, Israel was under Rome's rule, all right, and they believed and thought that the Messiah was going to come and that he was going to rid the Roman rule, restore Jerusalem back to the heyday of King David. Like that's what they believe. Like the Messiah is going to come and he is going to restore Jerusalem. He is going to take the throne as king, and we are going to be mighty like we were in the days of King David. And so, this procession of Jesus walking or being ridden on a donkey and them throwing them, their cloaks down and the palm branches down as they were hailing Jesus as the next king. And rightfully so, things just weren't really going to happen in the way that they had all hoped. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's not what it seems. It's not what it seems. And here's the thing is too often when we're in the middle of a battle and the enemy is attacking us and things aren't going well, we think, well, what am I doing wrong? Like my marriage feels like it's under attack, my kids, my job, and it just feels like, I'm in this storm, things aren't going well, and you kind of begin to look at your life and like, well, what am I doing wrong? Clearly I have to be doing something wrong, but sometimes it's not what it looks like. It's not what it seems. See, sometimes it's not what you're doing wrong, but it's what you're doing right. See, the enemy attacks those that he deems as a threat. Are you a threat to the kingdom of hell? That's right, the kingdom of hell. Are you a threat to the kingdom of hell? Because if you are, then the enemy's going to take notice and he's going to start attacking. So, sometimes the attacks of the enemy, it's not because you're doing something wrong. It's actually because you're doing something right.